Good evening, one and all, and welcome to the video. My name is Saumil Shah. I'm a software engineer, and I love to teach people on YouTube about new upcoming trending technologies. Today, in this video, I would like to teach you about dead letter queues on AWS SQS. What the hell is dead letter queue, right? So let me walk you over a little bit of theory, and then we'll do a lab at the end of the video. So what are you waiting for? Let's get started with this video. Alright, so give me one sec while I just fix my webcam right here because it appears to be a frozen and it should be good now, hopefully. So let's wait for a couple of minutes for the webcam to load. Alright, so it seems like let's get started. So what is a dead letter queue, right? Amazon SQS queue supports dead letter queue, which other queues, source queues, can target for messages that can be processed, consumed successfully. Dead letter queues are useful for debugging your application or messaging system because they let you isolate problematic messages to determine why the processing does not succeed. Well, layman language, right? So in very simple layman language, what this is trying to say is, if a particular, whenever you have an SQS queue, say you have a perfect love triangle, that is SNS, SQS, Lambda, right? Or whenever you publish a topic, it goes to the SQS queue and then it fires up a Lambda. Say your Lambda essentially needs to access some resource and do something. Say the Lambda failed, right? So you want to store that in a dead letter queue. So essentially a queue. So essentially this Lambda would put messages on the queue if that particular event was failed. So basically you can then do debugging. Essentially just that, right? In layman language. I would really like to read a couple of slides. I know I hate myself also, going through long text, but it's really important for us to understand a few theory. So let me read about that. How do dead letter queue work? Sometimes, and let me zoom in a little bit so if you guys want to read with me, and I have a lab at the end, so don't worry. Sometimes messages cannot be processed because of variety of possible issues, such as erroneous conditions within the producer or the consumer. Producer means the guy that sends the data. Consumer is the one that would consume. So when you set up a Lambda trigger, that's your consumer. Or an unexpected state change cause an issue with your application code. For example, if a user places a web order with a particular product ID, but the product ID is deleted from the database. Now the web store or the Lambda, essentially, it's going to try to fetch and it's going to fail, right? So this event you want to capture into a dead letter queue for your own debugging purposes. That is what dead letter is, man. Occasionally producer, also I would like to read a couple of more slides. Occasionally, producer and consumers might fail to interpret aspects of the protocol that they use to communicate, causing message corruptions or loss. Also, consumer hardware error might corrupt the message. Something like the EC2 restart it or something might happen. That might corrupt the message, right? So those all situations you want to use dead letter queue. So this slide would tell you how does a dead letter queue work, and let's just read. And I promise I won't go much into theory, man. The retry policy specifies the source queue, the dead letter queue, and the conditions under which an Amazon SQS queue moves the messages from the former to the latter if a consumer of the source queue fails to process messages specified number of times when the received count for a message exceeds the maximum received count for a queue. Amazon SQS queue moves the message to a dead letter queue. So in all the above scenario, it would move to a dead letter queue. Essentially, it's just showing you how things work on dead letter queue. Let me just read a couple of benefits, and then we should be good to go for a lab. The main task of a dead letter queue is handling messages failure. A dead letter queue lets you set aside and isolate messages that can be processed correctly to determine why their processing did not succeed. Setting up a dead letter queue allows you to do the following: configure an alarm for any message delivered to a dead letter queue. So essentially, say your business, whenever a particular Lambda failed, it would send to a dead letter, and that dead letter you could have another Lambda. I will show you all that, don't worry. And then what you could do, you can send emails, you can alert the users. A lot of things could be done, right, based on the business needs. Examine logs for exception that might have caused messages to be delivered to a dead letter queue. Analyze content for messages delivered to a dead letter queue. To diagnose software or producer or consumer hardware issues. Determine whether you have given your consumer sufficient time to process the message, right? The rate at which you send the messages and the consumer is not able to consume it, then it's gonna fail, right? And then those messages goes to the dead letter. So you can do all these stuff with the help of dead letter queue, right? As I said, no more boring theory, right? I know it's boring, and I really want to go to the demo. So yeah, man, let's see a demo of dead letter queue. But if you want to read more, I recommend coming to their documentation. Beautiful documentation. I usually like a reading, so I did read this article as well. But yeah, let's go to the lab and understand a little bit about dead letter queues, man. I have a Lambda here, right? And I've purposely said born to die, an exception. So as soon as this Lambda fires, it raises an exception. This essentially is simulating an event for a fail processing, and this should essentially go to a dead letter queue. I'll show you how to set up all this, and so don't worry on that. So let's open up management console. Hopefully you guys can see. Now here, please head over to Amazon SQSQ. Right here, simple queue services. Create queue. Let's call this queue as my, or let's say YouTube event queue. And usually also, I mean, you always try to follow a naming convention or underscore or whatever you want to say, but just follow some convention. So YouTube queue event, right? I'm just naming it something. For this one, message retention, I'll tell you what this does. So I'll read a definition, as I said, which will help you. I won't go much, but just a couple of lines. The message retention period is the amount of time that Amazon SQS retains a message that does not get deleted. Amazon SQSQ automatically deletes the message that have been in the queue for more than maximum message retention period. So essentially what it's trying to say is, if by that time, if the time passes out, then the messages will be deleted by the SQSQ. So for now, for the example, I don't want to keep that long. I'll just keep 120 seconds. I just want to keep short, man. So this is my basic queue. Everything looks good. Click on create queue right here. So the queue is ready, right? Now let's create the dead letter queue. So create queue. It's just a fancy name to me, to be honest. YouTube dead letter queue. Okay, you do that. Again, I'm gonna change this to minutes, whatever. So that's that. Leave everything to default. I'm using a standard queues right now. You have two queues, right? Now what you gotta do is this Lambda, we need to fire up. So whenever I send a message to a queue, I would like to fire up a Lambda. So YouTube, this one, I would say Lambda triggers. I would come here, click on configure Lambda, set the ARN, click on save. Make sure you have the IAM has appropriate roles and policies. So that's that. So whenever I submit a message, it's essentially going to fire up a Lambda because I have a Lambda trigger now. Okay. So when I put any message, it's going to fire up Lambda. Now we need to set up a dead letter queue, man. How do I do that? Okay, easy, man. Come to configurations, come to asynchronous invocation, click on edit. And right here, it says dead letter queue. You can choose SNS or SQS. I'm choosing SQS. YouTube dead letter queue. Click on save. So now that's been set up, as you can see here. Wait, my queue. Oh, that's being deleted. That's fine. Okay. Now what we gotta do is let's head over to the queue, because before this I was testing it out. So let's head over to the SQS. Wait, why my queues not? Oh, it's here, right here. So let's refresh. I should be having two queues. Yeah. So I have two queues now. That's YouTube queue event. Whenever I submit any messages, it's gonna fire up a Lambda that's gonna fail, and then it's gonna put it to dead letter. So here also we need to set up that. So click on edit. If you scroll down, dead letter, click on enable, and you need to select the dead letter queue, which is this one right here, YouTube event dead letter queue. Let's click on save. So everything looks good to me. Just want to verify one last time. So this should have a Lambda trigger. Looks good. So this is the ARN of the Lambda. Let's go to the actual Lambda and make sure that it's looks good. So Lambda, let's head over to the function. I'm just gonna click here again, and I should have an SQS. Looks good. So I have an SQS YouTube queue event. So whenever any messages come here, it would fire up this one, and it's gonna fail because remember, I have purposely made an error in the code, right? So the purpose is to show you the dead letter queue, right? So that's that. So we also did set up here. We came to configuration section right here. Essentially, I'm repeating my steps here. Edit dead letter queues, looks good. And then also on the queue section, for the normal queue, we came here, we clicked on edit, and we essentially provided a dead letter queue, the ARN of that. So looks good, right? Let's try to test it out. I'm excited, man. And do remember, based on your time interval, it might take time. So let's try to see this example, right? So let's send a message, man. I'm gonna say, so born to die, I will die. So this is gonna die, right? We know that, right? So we published a message here on the queue. So now if you refresh, you should see one message in flights, or that's already done because, yeah, there you go, one message in flights. I was like, yeah, it should show up. So that message would now be, essentially would be firing up a Lambda function according to the way we described, and we'll send up a couple of more. Okay, go to queue. So essentially I should be seeing the messages in flight. But now if I come to Lambda and if I come to monitor section right here and say view logs in CloudWatch, you should see the fail log, because these Lambdas are gonna fail, right? Because we have an exception purposely made, right? So hopefully when we come here and go to CloudWatch, you can set up alarms, as I said, right? Based on whatever your use case is. So if we come here, you should essentially, it's still working. The Lambda trigger has not been fired yet. So hopefully pretty soon you should see that. Or maybe I was on the wrong one. Let's try this one. Seems like, yeah, you see, born to die. So there was an exception, right? So the event fired and we ran into an exception, right? So now what you can see here as well. Now what I would like to see is essentially the messages would be landing up in a dead letter queue. So I just trying to finally it seems like now we see the message in dead letter queue. It took a while, and the reason was, as I said, I had this maximum retry. I had it set to about 2, and I made it change to 0, so that way it won't retry, you know, every single time it fails. So I changed that, and now we have a message in a dead letter queue. Essentially, we can come here and I think send. Let's pull for a message. There you go, man. So born to die. So yeah, it takes usually time. So make sure you have the right settings. As I said, ideally you wanna have them retry to three times, because if it fails, you wanna try for 3 times. This is all about dead letter queues, man. This is all you need to know about dead letter queues. It's extremely easy to set up. Yeah, you know, just pretty fast. You can set up using some, you know, you just gotta click some buttons and then there you go, you just have it, right? So yeah, I hope this video would be useful to the people who are completely new to dead letter queues. And if this video was useful, I would request to give a like and share the video to the people whom you think it would be useful. Once again, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Keep smiling, keep programming, and I would see you guys in the upcoming next video. Take care, guys.